Hello, my name is Joey Zaza. I am a newfangled artist working with a variety of different mediums, often digital art, writing software, sound, movement, um, and now a lot of kind of 3D metaverse sort of ideas and concepts coming out of this loop art critique, which I am very happy to have been a part of. Um, what we're looking at is a couple different GLBs that I ended up creating to go into the metaverse world that I built. Um, they're sort of come from a variety of different inputs. So this one that I'm closest to here was an exploration using 3JS to sort of create spherical, three-dimensional GLB structures. I took screenshots of that structure and sent it through a stable diffusion model to explore lighting and transparency and gradients. And then I took those outputs from stable diffusion and fed it into a technology called Dream Gaussian, which is used to create three-dimensional sort of GLBs from 2D files such as JPEGs. And so the GLBs that are created here are from that technology. And some of the things that I like a lot about GLBs is being able to kind of go inside of them. So inside of this one, there's this other GLB, which is kind of hidden and tucked away. So, and you can kind of see that floor that was outside just a little bit on the bottom of this. So how you kind of create these, I don't know, spaces and such. And even this one, you can then go further into, and it has its own sort of color and texture and such. And I also like a lot of these GLBs and worlds trying to create a place where you can kind of screenshot and explore, and then use those sort of screenshots back into maybe an AI process or to further create more GLBs. So the world itself is plastic sort of space that artists can use for their own kind of creative exploration. This floor is a little bit different, sort of flashy GIF, which I created for an object for object event that was happening on object.com platform on the Tezos blockchain. So that's an event that happens every once in a while where artists come together and they release low cost edition and everyone's collecting everyone else's work. And it's a good way of kind of building community and connecting with other artists. It's just sort of a flat GIF, two-dimensional file. So to see how that kind of interfaces and fits into sort of 3+ dimensional spaces. The GIF itself is created from some P5JS code that I wrote, which is then input into Stable Diffusion. And it's 24 frames, which gives it a second long GIF. And when you take those 24 frames, put them together, you get this kind of like shimmering starlight sort of effect. So it's also a reference to the show name Starlight that we went with for our exhibition. And yeah, this GIF and the prior work that we were looking at, I minted both onto the object platforms. Part of this work was to go look into like what the end output would be. And I think I'm still going to keep carrying forward since the critique was 6 weeks. But I sort of envision like generative metaverse worlds. So we sort of need to like build those platforms. If you look at a platform like a generative art platform like FX Hash, you can upload 3JS code and work in three-dimensional models in that way. And then if you look at a platform like Emergent Properties, you can create 2D kind of PNGs using AI technology. So we need platforms to incorporate AI technology and metaverse sort of concepts so that we can create this sort of work and mint it to the blockchain so that it can be conserved, so that years into the future it will be available, and also so that artists can sell it to receive income for their work so that they can carry on their practice. So I see this hopefully morphing into a metaverse world project where you hit the random button and that's going to create a metaverse for you with three-dimensional structures, and you'll be able to explore these worlds. And then when you want to explore a new world, you just hit generate new metaverse world, and a new world will be there, and you can find one that you like, and then so on.
Fantastic. What a great idea.
A lot of this practice definitely comes forth with me into how I build into the future. I was definitely a big kind of critic of the metaverse because it's kind of a concept that we've been working on for a handful of decades. So to see what's changed over that time period, and I would say sort of the accessibility to the hardware. For example, the Loop Space runs even better on my phone than it does on my computer.
Wow. That's rare.
Yeah.
That's rare.
And just open source software is being able to have developers have a lot of powerful software at their use to kind of build these worlds out. The connectivity too. So it's always cool being on the internet, being able to connect with people from all around the world, have conversation. And now we're not just even talking or like video chatting. We're having all kinds of different file formats that we're able to share with each other. So everything that you're seeing here, you can just upload. You can upload a GIF, you can upload a GLB. We can connect in ways that we never really were able to prior. So I think I'll always sort of be a critic of this metaverse space. But it's definitely, I would say, the dimensional web is sort of the future. And it's interesting because there's been so many major changes that have happened over the last several years, technical, financial, artistic, sort of coming out of the Web3 space. And I don't, like, people aren't going to even like realize that the changes have happened for a few years, but I would like consider, if you're developing, to almost just like abandon any kind of concepts of what web pages look like, or Android or iOS apps, and any of that sort of stuff from like Web 2.0 or even like a Gmail client. A lot of sort of communication is going to be happening in spaces like this, and it's not like, none of our current infrastructure of technology is able to support spaces like this.
No.
So,
yeah.
For example, data tracking, that whole mess and surveillance and such. It's like behind the times on kind of the Web 2 internet, but in this new space, like, how would you even go about recording the data is like billions and billions of dollars are available there, and all of the other sort of industries, because you can't just port over Web 2 technologies to solve your problems in Web 3, because they're new problems and people don't realize it yet. And it's an exciting time, sort of, no matter, I guess, what part of the process you're in. Yeah, and I guess maybe we might want to pop over to the Zazaverse by clicking on this link here.
Sure.
And we'll see. Our avatars might disappear. This space is cool. Like if you kind of go over to that sort of dark blue purple area, if you want to like head over there, that's kind of a cool area to go to. It's a bit of a distance, so it might take a couple seconds to go.
I like how fly is automatically enabled.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you navigate these spaces was a question that I had, and it's nice to just sort of be able to like float through the space, I suppose.
All right, I'm gonna head over there. Wow. Okay.
Okay, guys. Yeah, so it's cool too. Like one of the things I think that's wonderful about GLBs and digital sort of art is being able to change the scale so easily. So when you're working in the physical process, to take even a simple idea and scale it out to something much larger can take a ton of resources and time and so on. But in the digital space, you can just increase the size, and it costs you nothing.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of storage or even like processing or financial concerns or anything. So that's really a nice thing. So it's interesting when you're working kind of in the digital space versus the physical. Sometimes something that's very expensive in one will be free in the other, and so on. So looking for these kind of areas that these like differences in understanding the kind of mediums and maybe how you should build. And then this whole world that we're in too is just a GLB that's um, a really, really large size. And I like all the different kind of texture, and at times it kind of looks sort of lo-fi, and at times it's kind of a higher detail, and sometimes it's gradient, and sometimes there's kind of pixelated boxes or triangles.
Will you follow me into the black space? Because when I go too much into it, I can't hear you anymore because it's so far away.
Gotcha. Yeah, I am following you. I think the sound is just centered out of the spawn.
Really?
I am not sure. I'm like right next to you, so I don't know if you can hear me.
You're right. Then the audio is centered out of the spawn point. That's interesting. Yeah. That's something in the XR editor. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. I just really want to explore it. I'll go back to the spawn. I love these tunnels.
It's great to just kind of go through these sort of GLB spaces and see what's going around. I also like to build work so that like I can look at it and explore it. I don't really necessarily want to know what I'm building. I want to kind of build things that are unknown or unexpected. If I'm just setting out to make something that I know what it is, that's fine. Other people can enjoy it, but for me, it's not really something that I can kind of explore. So to kind of build the work and the world in a way that's unknown, so I can get to exploring it, is what I like to do as well. And that's kind of when I feel the work starts to take on a form where it can be sort of finalized. When I notice I'm just kind of moving around the world or listening to a piece of audio that I built for half an hour or an hour, and no longer kind of writing code or building things. Those are the times where I don't know, something is at least interesting to me, and it kind of goes beyond the exploration into the, I guess, finalizing of the work a bit. That's why I like the generative processes, incorporating randomness the into the software. So you don't necessarily know what color something will be. You don't know what shape it might take on. You don't know. Also, with AI tools as well, um, there's a lot of unknown that comes from that that's built into the system, which I like um, and seek out. I know that can be sometimes an issue if you're building a system where, um, let's say people's lives are involved, such as some kind of airplane system or something. You want to make sure that you know everything and there are no unknowns that are popping up. But creatively, it's nice to have unknowns
Yeah.
appearing in your work. It makes it interesting to you as the builder, and hopefully other people viewing the work as well. The AI does like a really good job with that. A lot of this work too is kind of a balance between knowing when to write code and get something sort of you know, pixel perfect as you would want with your code versus letting the AI kind of give you organic shapes um, and kind of interesting colors and gradients and lighting and shadows as well.
I was going to ask about the colors because I feel like your palette is very specific to you, and because you're working so abstractly, every form, right, is every every element is kind of part of the content of the piece. And so I'm wondering about this color palette and how you choose it. I know it's generative, but you have some input into the colors.
Definitely. So I sort of am, I don't know, I call it like the Zaza palette. It's like a wild array of like really bright color that I tend to sort of work with. The chip floor is kind of like a slightly dulled palette for me, which it's so
Mm-hmm.
vibrant and full of color. Um, so that dark purple, I guess GLB that you were exploring before, that comes from an image, a microscopic image of bug eye exoskeleton. So under the microscope, that was mostly a little bit of like golden brownish, kind of a white background. Um, when I bring kind of an image from photography into post, I will often just kind of explore colors a lot. I tend to be drawn to that like blurple blue purple color. I tend to increase saturation like very high, which is how I'm able to get some of the colors out of it. But then that image, which was kind of a dark and blue and purple, was fed into Stable Diffusion, which added some of its own color into it a bit. Um, and then kind of going and taking the image and putting it into post again and tweaking saturation and different color levels. And the Dream Gaussian also kind of interprets color and creates color in its own sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit on kind of the GLB that's at the center of the GIF, or like the main
Mm-hmm.
one that we were looking at prior. I don't like when white breaks through too often. So for photography, I almost always want to like eliminate the like whites. I like when everything's kind of on a black background.
Hmm.
And I feel like I sort of start from black, and that's kind of where things originate from, and then usually color will come from there. It's interesting because
Yeah.
I've worked with black and white before, and I like it, and I'm sort of trying to move towards more muted sort of work, just because it's like I feel, I don't know, in some ways you kind of want to, you know, move culture along and have art and such be kind of inspired by um, the ideas that you have. And I feel we were able to bring forth the sort of like wild and newfangled rainbow color flashy GIF thing that I think has been running on for a little bit too long. So, I mean, I think it will continue because that sort of stuff is what gets clicks and likes and so on. Um, but hopefully, in this new space, we can, you know, move more into kind of minimalist sort of um, muted colors, black and whites, and so on. But part of the color from here was just an exploration of color. It was an exploration of light. It was an exploration of transparency, of gradients, and so on. So a lot of that is kind of coming from the, you know, mostly rainbow sort of visible light spectrum. Um, I didn't attempt to work in like non-human viewable light on this project, but that may be interesting in some way, because sensors and computers and such are able to process and view things in very different ways than humans can.
Oh.
And yeah, color is fun. So the other GLB that we're in is kind of has this like, purples and reds and dark blues, and that's also on the GIF, a smaller version GLB. And there's that green eye thing that kind of has this orange iridescent sort of center, larger GLB, and then that like pink, blue, yellow, green that has just about every single possible color in in the GLB. But that I like having all of the color there because like in that one you can like go into it and you can really find these like small spaces on that mostly pink rainbow GLB. And then I like to like screenshot it, like if it's an interesting sort of color composition. Like you just move around in these GLBs in these worlds and find something, like you find kind of an interesting composition of color, take a screenshot of that, give that to the AI, and it will start adding like detail to it and building out the work. So that color is like, I want to have this object or space that I can explore and be able to use it as a way of creating more work.
Yeah. It's amazing. I really enjoy that kind of process, and it's very much just like an abstract painter or artist. How do you know you're finished?
When the money or the time runs out, you know. I mean, for this I had 6 weeks, so I was just doing this every day, and this is kind of what I came up with without sort of having built as directly in this space. Like I viewed a lot of the kind of metaverse kind of museums and galleries and exhibitions and that sort of a thing, but I never kind of created my own world. Um, this I also, for example, want to do a lot more with. I want there to be sound. I like working with sound a lot. I haven't been able to get to it, which is interesting for me. I think there's a lot of interesting experimentation in terms of like generative sound and writing software to kind of create sound, as well as the physical too. There's a lot of wonderful sounds in the world. I think it's a channel that we're usually bombarded with, at least for me, kind of being in the city area, so we tend to tune it out. But this space should have sound all over it. And I also want movement in this space as well. So outside of my flashy GIF carpet sort of thing, there's no movement, which is, you can't have a world that has no movement. That's a little too boring for me. So I'd like to add movement in here. I'd like to add sound in here. I'd like to make this generative so that we can have worlds like this. And then, you know, we want to do a part 2 of this now turning into a very long talk. So we hit just random. Now we have a new world. We can walk around it, explore, have conversation about art, and so on. And then the whole minting process too. I want to be able to mint these worlds so that people can hold them because, after an exhibition is over, work can go away as it will in our salon space, or different sites can go down from time to time. So I want to be able to preserve this work. Um, and I really wish that all of the historical digital art was preserved so that I could look at it and view it. Some of the metaverse works that were, already decades ago, being
Mm.
able to go back into those worlds, being able to see what those artists were building. So in this instance, the time ran out, and this is in some ways like a whip. It's where things are. I'm happy with it. I think this Zazaverse that I made is it's cool, and it definitely has like elements of me, and there's a lot of ways that it can go to. Um, I think other reasons the work can be done is trends can kind of come and go. So people been maybe working in one area, a certain medium might almost get a sort of uh, everyone's doing it sort of a thing. People are working with the 8x8 pixels on the 8bidoo platform a couple years ago, and people are doing the generative art now, and people are doing the AI work. So artists tend to usually want to keep up to date with the technologies, and I think everyone has probably made a piece of AI work or um, used it in their practice in some sort of a way. So um, yeah, sometimes what everyone else is doing is kind of what dictates when you're building a type of thing and when you're not.
Mhm.
And also, it's just sort of whatever is drawing you towards creating the thing. At the moment, I don't know. I've always liked to work with technologies that are current and at the forefront, and sometimes building those things prior to other people, you know, bringing the things into existence that don't already is always it can be a trap, but it's a fun area to explore. So just kind of researching and learning and experimenting. What can AI do? What can software do and digital art do? Um, Usually, you'll see some higher level of production pick a thing up, and then at that point, it's not like you're not going to be able to necessarily compete with some of the largest sort of artistic animation creative sort of
Mhm.
platforms as a single individual or a small sort of enterprise kind of thing. Um, so knowing when to just kind of let the Pixars and such of the world take something and run with it.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, thank you so much.
yeah, and thank you so much. This has been like one of the best experiences. So it's a super cool platform that's going on here, and if anyone's listening, I recommend checking out the website. Usually there's an open call. I think one is just about to wrap up, so check the website for open calls. Check the website for cool exhibitions. A lot of interesting artists and um, people on the critique coming through here. So special things are happening, and thanks for bringing this forth because without you, it would absolutely not be here. This specific work would not be here,
Oh,
and so on. So it's that kind of a thing. You show up, you bring something in, people get involved, and wild things happen.
well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. Love being in here. It is so beautiful.